It is my pleasure to turn it over to a partner who we'd worked closely with at Bloomberg Philanthropies, Josh Shapiro. As State Attorney General, he's been a leader in the fight against illegal guns and the opioid crisis and climate change. For some reason, voters elected him governor instead of an election-denying QAnon supporter. But it was great to see that he wasn't especially close either, the contest. The fact is that he's here today with us. It says a lot about his commitment to public health and his commitment to make us and our families live longer, healthier lives. So please join me in welcoming a friend and partner, the Governor-elect of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro.
How are you? Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. Feels good. Good advice. Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be with you all today. Mr. Mayor, thank you for including me, and thank you for choosing to have this health summit right here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, the home of the 11-1 Eagles, Philadelphia. We are proud that this American Health Summit is being held here in Pennsylvania. And I'm especially proud to have the opportunity to address all of you, the folks who are doing the meaningful, results-oriented work in our communities day in and day out. I'm pleased you're here, and I'm pleased that we'll have the opportunity to learn from one another. I hope over the next few days that you'll be able to meet some of the community leaders and policymakers right here in Philadelphia, those who are doing the hard work every day to make our communities safer and healthier and more prosperous. And I hope that folks here have the chance to learn from each of you so that we can improve our communities across the Keystone State. You know, our democracy was born right here in Philadelphia, just a few blocks from where we sit this morning. The story of our American democracy is one where we take a few steps forward and then we take a step back. But the trueness and the greatness of this American story is that we always make forward progress. We always advance the ball, and we always leave the next generation a bit better off than the way we found this nation. Forward progress being made by ordinary Americans, rising up, demanding more, seeking justice, looking for a better future for all. You are part of writing this next chapter in our American story. And while the foundation of our American democracy, the right to vote, has been tested, it certainly was in this last governor's race, and I'm not naive enough to think that those tests are over. So is the basic health of our citizens. That basic health is critical to the American democracy. It's a foundational principle of our society to make sure that everyone has a shot to live a good and healthy life. Strong public health, in my mind, equals a strong democracy. And that is what we are all striving toward, what we are all working for, what we are all building, what we can all learn from right here in the birthplace of our democracy. Right now, in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, I know it might feel like we're in the midst of one of those chapters where we've gotten knocked back from a public health perspective. Well, in the last 3 years, we've seen life expectancy in the United States decline faster than at any point over the last century. As the CDC reported earlier this year, Americans' life expectancy today is actually 3 years shorter than it was back in just 2019. And we know that, sadly, that drop is even worse in Black and Latino communities here in Pennsylvania and across this country. And while the pandemic obviously contributed to this decline, there are many other reasons. And as Pennsylvania's Attorney General, I've witnessed some of those challenges firsthand. I'd like to spend a few moments talking about three of those things contributing to the real challenges that we face today. I've seen the toll of the opioid epidemic in Pennsylvania, from right here in Philly to all the way out in the southwestern rural communities of Greene County in Pennsylvania. An opioid epidemic that claims the lives of 15 Pennsylvanians each and every day. It's one of the reasons why the Office of Attorney General has arrested 8,200 drug dealers in our communities. But I'm the first Attorney General who has said over and over and over again that drug addiction is a disease, not a crime, and it needs to be treated that way. I also believe that the drug crisis that we see on our street corners, it wasn't manufactured on our street corners. No, it was manufactured by the greed in pharmaceutical executive boardrooms. And that is why, in addition to making those arrests in our communities, I led a nationwide effort of other attorneys general around the country, Democrats and Republicans, to finally hold those pharmaceutical companies accountable for the role that they played in this crisis that claims the lives of 15 Pennsylvanians every single day. And we were able to announce an historic settlement about a year ago, one that's going to bring $28 billion back to the states, including over $1 billion right here in Pennsylvania. But unlike the tobacco settlement fund from years ago, we guaranteed as part of this settlement that each and every dollar from the settlement must go to treatment and related services in our communities. And so you come here to Pennsylvania and in your states at a critically important time when it comes to battling this opioid crisis, because this is a moment where we have real resources to be able to address the need, to be able to save lives, to be able to be compassionate. And while we need to make sure our criminal justice system is married up with our treatment community, we must make sure we approach this problem with compassion and with an eye toward treatment for those who are battling the disease of addiction. In addition to the opioid crisis, which claims far too many lives every day, gun violence continues to take a brutal toll on communities here in Pennsylvania and across this country. I applaud Mayor Bloomberg for his extraordinary work in this area, though he would be the first to admit that a lot more needs to be done. We have both visited too many grieving families who've lost a loved one to gun violence, or met too many children who live every day with the trauma of seeing gun violence in their communities. I believe that the gun violence epidemic should be considered a public health crisis in this country, and we need to treat it that way. I was recently at Jay Cook Elementary School. It's an elementary school in North Philadelphia. If you drive toward Temple University up Broad Street, you'll see the school just off of Broad Street. Spoke to a group of 4th and 5th graders that day. I was invited to talk about government, how a bill becomes a law, the basic stuff. And as I was leaving this classroom of 4th and 5th graders, primarily Black and Latino students, the teacher asked if I would stick around for just a second. She looked at the class and said, "Hey, class, tell the Attorney General," and by the way, I don't think any of them knew what the heck an Attorney General is, but tell the Attorney General if you've ever heard gunshots. Now, my kids and I live probably 20 minutes from this school. My kids have never heard gunshots. Every single hand went up in that classroom. Then asked the children, "Do you know someone who's been shot?" Nearly 75% of the kids raised their hand in that classroom. We have to acknowledge that these children are living with real trauma every single day. We can't just expect them to go to school and learn if we're not treating the trauma that they're dealing with in their communities day in and day out. And so while there's an important role for law enforcement to play, to get those who are wreaking havoc on our streets off our streets and behind bars, and to that end, as AG, we've arrested over 500 gun traffickers just in this community. We also have to recognize that these kids are suffering and they need our help. Gun violence, the opioid epidemic, two major public health crises. You know what else is? a lack of clean air and pure water in certain communities across our Commonwealth. You're here in Pennsylvania, where residents of our Commonwealth have a constitutional right to clean air and pure water. It's somewhat unique compared to other state constitutions. Article 1, Section 27 lays that out. Yet for too many families, they can't bathe their kids or drink the water that comes out of the tap in certain parts of Pennsylvania. Just last week, I was in Susquehanna County. It's up in the northeastern part of our state, right along the New York State border. I announced an historic criminal plea agreement with a fracking company that took responsibility for the first time for their crimes against our communities in polluting residents' water as a result of their fracking operations. As part of this settlement, the company will now pay residents' water bills for the next 75 years, but most importantly, they will be responsible for making sure that a new public water line with healthy, clean water is available to the community of Dimmock, which had their water mistreated by that fracking company. This new public water line was 14 years in the making, and we got it done. Because this public health crisis, a lack of clean air and clean water, that is also leading to a decline in life expectancy. And policymakers need to consider these challenges and these solutions in the context of the important work that you're doing day in and day out. Environmental issues, violence issues, drug addiction. These are all issues of public health that we need to work on. And so while it may feel like we're in a moment where we've been knocked back a bit, I certainly feel more hopeful and more inspired by the work that folks like you and others are doing than ever before, because I believe we will be able to meet this moment. And I want to thank you for the important work that you're doing to get us there. You know, as Pennsylvania's next governor, I want to invite you to join us to be part of these solutions. Mayor Bloomberg has invested a lot in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I hope you'll invest your time and your big brains in helping us do better here. And to me, if we're going to find one place to start when we want to improve public health outcomes, it has to start with our children and in our classrooms. Not only fully funding education, but also investing in school infrastructure so every student has a safe building to learn in. It means ensuring that every student has a great teacher and all the books and computers they need to learn, but it also means acknowledging the fact that there are students in those classrooms suffering and they need someone to talk to, which is why, as governor, I will put a mental health counselor in every single school building across Pennsylvania. And I invite you to be part of addressing our kids' mental health. A few years ago, we launched an initiative in the Attorney General's office called Safe to Say. This is an anonymous tip reporting system where we thought we would give kids an outlet to be able to give us a tip if someone was bringing a gun to school or someone was going to do something violent. Now, Lori and I are blessed with 4 kids, and our 4 kids looked at me when I told them about this idea. They said, "Dad, that is the stupidest idea ever." My kids don't think I'm particularly smart. And they said, "No kid is ever going to submit a tip." Well, I'm pleased to stand before you and tell you I'm not as stupid as my kids think, because we've received over 80,000 tips in just the last nearly 4 years. But here's the thing, what we were wrong about. The tips actually have not been about someone, thank God, bringing a gun to school or doing something violent against another student. We've had a few tips like that, but not many. In truth, of the 80,000 tips, 77% of them are about mental health, about suicide ideation, about self-harm, about students wanting to report not just themselves, but others who are crying out for help. We are the only place in the nation, the only state in the nation that has this data that's been gathered by the students. They're crying out for help. And if we really want to have good healthcare outcomes, then we must make sure that we are investing in the mental health of our children. They need our help, and we need to act now. I invite you to work with us on that. I also invite you to work with us on this public health epidemic that is gun violence. I'll do everything I can to make sure that we hire more police in our communities, that our prosecutors prosecute people who wreak havoc on our communities to the fullest extent of the law. But that's only one piece of it, the law enforcement piece. We must make sure that every leader stands up and does their part, from changing our laws to have universal background checks and to especially keep ghost guns out of the hands of criminals. That has quickly become the weapon of choice for criminals in our communities. But let's also work together to pass red flag laws in Pennsylvania, because I refuse to accept a reality in Pennsylvania where anyone has to fear in a classroom, a supermarket, or a club that people who shouldn't have guns can get their hands on them. We need good schools and safe communities, healthy students where everyone has the chance to be lifted up, where everyone has the chance to compete, where everyone has the chance to be a part of our collective success, where we invest in small business corridors so that those students, when they're walking on safe streets to and from a school where they can learn well, see those businesses as a place of opportunity for them, not just a place in a faraway distance that they can't achieve, but those local communities, those local businesses where they see a chance for them, where we can grow our economy, where we can have students in their schools see pathways to success and opportunity that's not just defined by whether you go to college or not, but where we put equal pride into a student who learns vo-tech and goes into one of the trades. Because we need welders as much as we need lawyers, and I would argue maybe we need more welders than lawyers, but we need to give our students an opportunity to succeed and see success in so many different ways, another way where we can find a positive and healthy outcome for our students by creating these new and different pathways to opportunity. So look, we have a lot of work to do. And I invite you to not just spend a few days here and go back to your communities and forget all about Philly, but I invite you to be a part of what we're building here in Philly and across Pennsylvania. I invite you to take advantage of the incredible generosity and opportunity that Mayor Bloomberg has created for all of us, not just by having a summit here, but by investing in our communities and investing in all of you in the groundbreaking work and research that you are doing. And I invite you to realize your role in our American story, in our American democracy, to think about our ancestors and their ancestors and the hard work they did time and time again when they were faced with challenges, to look our kids in the eye and say, we are going to do better for you. We're going to leave this place better off for you than the way we found it. The work of writing this next chapter falls to each and every one of you. And I want to say thank you for doing your part. Thank you for making a difference in your communities. Thank you for coming up with the big ideas of today and tomorrow that are going to save lives. Whether it's lives that would be lost to an opioid overdose, lives that would be lost to gun violence, lives that would be lost because of unhealthy, unsafe environments where water can't be trusted to drink. You all are going to make a big difference in our communities. You all are going to help us write this next chapter of success and prosperity and good health in the United States of America. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your work. Appreciate you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Bloomberg. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.